Are you a follower? Do you like to jump on the latest and greatest bandwagon when it comes to new technology? Do you wait in line for days to get a specific color of a phone just because it was hyped and pumped up so much, yet underproduced, that you're worried that you're not going to get the color that you want? If that's the case, you might be an iPhone user. Now, folks are constantly replacing their phones. Their contracts end, they renew. They usually have one of two choices: Apple phones or Android-based phones. There are other ones, BlackBerry, Microsoft, but for the most part, people choose the Apple or the iPhone, iOS running on it. But there's differences in those two devices. First off, let's talk about hardware. When you get an Apple device, you are limited to specific hardware because it's only produced by Apple. Now, over the past few years, they've tried to vary that up a little. They make different colors. They maybe have a bigger iPhone now that's a little bigger, the size of the size of your hand. But for the most part, you're limited with Apple. You don't have the option for keyboards. You're stuck getting support from Apple or Apple authorized retailers. But as far as hardware goes, the Android is superior because the Android phone is produced by many manufacturers: Samsung, Motorola, the list goes on. And you can pick and choose what kind of phone you want, what color it is, how big it is. You can get a phone with a keyboard still, whereas you can't do that with an iPhone. The other options you have hardware-wise on Android devices that you do not have on iPhones is to add internal space. You can actually pop in SD cards. They're cheap in price to most Android devices and expand your storage, whereas on an iPhone, you're stuck with the storage you purchased that thing at, unless you want to use the cloud. Now, which you can do that too with the Android, you could use the cloud as well, but at least you have the option for local storage. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is cost of the hardware, because you're stuck with the price of your iPhone. It's set prices. You usually cannot get any deals on those things because the prices are set by the manufacturer, Apple, with the cell phone providers that resell those devices. So you can get an Android a lot cheaper than you can get an iPhone. So let's talk about the difference in apps and functionality with the Android phone versus the iPhone at this point, because that's important to mention as well. The Google Play Store is equivalent to the iTunes Store. Google Play for the Android, iTunes is for the Apple. Consistently, the Google Play Store has more apps available. I think right now it has over 100,000 more apps. Now, that's not that big of a deal because most of those apps are worthless, just like on the iTunes Store. But one of the nice things about the Android Google Play Store is that most of the apps there are free. The ones that actually give you some functionality, whereas it's hard to get good functional apps on the iTunes Store for free that aren't severely limited. The other thing is that you have to sign up. You have to sign up through Apple. You have to use their applications, whereas on with the Android, you can actually download unsigned apps and make your own apps. You can make your own apps with Apple as well, but it's really locked down. Google actually encourages innovation in that regard, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So you understand about hardware. We talked about applications being available. Let's talk about the user experience, because there's a major difference between iPhone users and Android users. The iPhone user is usually not as tech savvy. I mean, they're into tech. They're usually not as hands-on and gritty as the Android user. It's kind of similar to the Mac OS people versus the PC people. Apple is, like I mentioned before, they severely lock down their APIs. That's the code you develop with that allows you to integrate your app into the iOS. Whereas Android is fairly open source. They're more lenient than Apple is in that regard. One thing I wanted to mention that's cool that the Android does is that you can actually, when someone calls you, you don't want their call, you can actually put them in a contact list and send them directly to voicemail. You don't have to touch anything. You just automatically, you don't get it. You don't have to swipe, nothing like that. But Apple has consistently blocked development on that for whatever reason. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing is most of the people you'll find that have Android phone or Apple phones versus Android is they are Apple fanboys. It's the best way I can put it. They are dedicated customers. It's not because Apple has the best device. It's not because it's any more stable than all these Android devices. It's just because they love Apple. They always have. They probably always will. Apple is really good at mass marketing, whereas Android is it's kind of an underground thing. People who use it realize it's great, and especially if they're a little tech savvy, they understand. Look, I get a lot more flexibility with this phone than I have with my Apple device. I can take it to random places, fix it. I can even download hacked versions of the operating system if I should so choose. Not that I'm recommending that. But there's a lot of benefit to having an Android phone over an Apple iPhone. So, like I said, folks are constantly changing their devices, and you're always making the choice. Am I going to get an Android or am I going to get an Apple? Well, most people with Apples, they usually just end up getting another Apple device. But if you want to have a phone with a lot of functionality and versatility, I would recommend looking at the Android phone at least once. And you may end up keeping it. You may like it. But if you're the person who wants to be a conformist, if you jump on the bandwagon with every new thing that comes out that a certain company makes, then you may be an Apple user. So, thank you.